Hi, everybody. I'm here with Charles Bernard, who is the board chair for Global Chamber New York. I've had the pleasure of knowing Charles for many years through, I believe, an introduction from Hank Marshall originally many years ago. And he's been a member of Global Chamber with his primary company. And then along the way, oh my, he is such an entrepreneur and innovator that, of course, he was on the AI wave before people could spell AI, and he's applied it to the sales process. And so, all of us, including Hank, some of you know Hank as our first board chair for the Global Chamber Phoenix chapter, and kind of a legend in his own mind and in our minds as well in Arizona. Uh, uh, Through that connectivity, Charles not only became a member, but became an advisory board member and has come up with some, of course, amazing ideas based on his knowledge of sales, his knowledge of AI, and his extraordinary knowledge of people. Charles, you are an observer of people. You're an observer of what it takes to get them to buy. Could you tell us a little bit about what brought you here, what you're doing, and I'd love to be able to introduce you to all of our advisors across the U.S.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Doug. And I feel honored to be a friend and someone that I work with in helping you grow the Global Chamber. I think it's an organization that works well in terms of my worldview, like you said. Um, I grew up in the UK and I came over to the US many years ago and started with a big company, General Electric, as a software engineer, and then I was actually put into sales at my client's request because the client said he wanted me to run the account, and then GE viewed that as a sales opportunity to expand the account, which was Mobil Oil before they merged with Exxon, which is now Exxon Mobil. So that's a little bit of background of why, how I started and the to answer your question about my business and me is because they're kind of intertwined, or they're very intertwined, is that I created a methodology called enabling buying in a world of selling. And the drivers of that methodology are two companies. One is Criteria for Success, which you alluded to, has been around 20 years. That's a traditional, more of your traditional sales consulting, training, coaching, mentoring organization. We have a team of people that help there. And then a few years ago, kind of around when you and I met prior to COVID, we've always been in the traditional company working on playbooks, and no one was reading those playbooks. And so, especially salespeople. And so we realized that there was a demand for the knowledge. Companies wanted people, especially their salespeople, to standardize on that information that they could accurately represent to their buyers. But because no one was reading it, it wasn't really working out too well for these companies until AI got integrated into our platform. So we literally developed a brand new playbook structured platform where the person doesn't have to read any of the playbook. AI helps develop the playbook, and AI will, our APIs, our AI that we put into the product will allow companies to, whether it's salespeople, marketing, operations, anybody involved in revenue, to go to the coach, which is the AI, and ask it anything. I have a client, they're not getting back to me, or I want to research this company, or I want to generate a proposal, or can you help me structure my week? Or can you help me develop a prospecting action plan? And so think of all the things you can traditionally do with AI, but it's now much more focused to the company. And so that's a little bit about me and my business. Did you want to know about the connection to Global Chamber? Is that the next thing?
It would be great to understand uh, the the way you emphasize the buying process versus selling, and then how that how you've used those ideas in your leadership role at Global Chamber. You have a unique view of the world. You apply that to get companies to be successful. You've been successful as the chair of Global Chamber New York. I think it relates.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think
how
I
have you
think
thought
you're
about that, and how has that transpired in your mind?
yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question, Doug. You just opened up the answer for me because I was kind of wondering how I would answer it, but just listening to you, it kind of became clear. So in both cases, with my company or companies and Global Chamber, the through line is one very dramatic thing for me, and that is an expression I heard a while ago that I fell in love with, and that is it came from Victor Hugo, who was a French uh, philosopher. And the quote that he said was very dramatic for me and applies in this case, which is um, you can stop an invading army, but you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. And so when enabling buying in a world of selling was formed and my team worked on it and the words came out, that was an idea whose time has come. And a year ago, almost to the day, in New York, I attended a scant, small, kind of a little punching below our weight for sure meeting with the members of the New York City chapter. I call us the Ronin. If you know anything about samurai, they're kind of like these talented swordsmen who just wander around. They don't really have a lord or master or a cause that they rally around. And so it was like, I think you were there. I pounded on the table. I was angry. I was like, how is it that we have an amazing organization led by you, Doug, with 550 cities around the world, and New York City is no place? And it should be the reverse. And so that was the idea whose time has come. And the idea was waking up the sleeping giant. It's like, we're a giant. I mean, how can New York City on the world stage not be represented as, and a little bit of ego I'll throw in, as the number one chapter, not the 50th or whatever we were at the time, almost non-existent. And what happened at that moment is where I stopped taking credit, because it's almost like the moment the words left my mouth, for the people who were in the room, who was Susan Asadi, the executive director, and a few others, and you, I think Cesar was there. It's like, yeah, why aren't we the number one? And so it wasn't that difficult to pursue a mission to really get this chapter in shape. And so, from my perspective, I wasn't working to do you a favor or anyone a favor. It's like I wasn't getting compensated for it, and I know nobody is. But if you can somehow integrate your worldview, like you so elegantly said, I think if you can integrate your worldview with someone else's worldview, some other organization's worldview, which is what I feel is the case here. I would never do this if I didn't think our worldviews were integrated. So it's not like I think of I'm a member and I run my business. It's almost like I am my business. I am the Global Chamber. And my wife, at the time, we're amicably divorced, but at the time, back to when I was with GE, she would laugh and say, Charles, because I was the number one performer in sales. And sorry, I froze a little bit. I hope you can still hear me.
Yes.
she would laugh and said, "If we rip open your shirt, we're going to see a giant tattoo of GE on your chest." And I said, "Yes, Mindy, because when I talk to my customers, I don't talk about GE. I am GE." And I feel the same way with Global Chamber. I don't represent Global Chamber, and I hope this isn't insulting to you because I know you're the CEO. But in a way, I assume the role of CEO because I have a belief system that if you have an employee base or if you have an organization with 10,000 members and you ask what percentage of the responsibility of the success of the organization belongs to each of those 10,000 members, one answer could be it's 1/10,000th of a percentage. But that's not my answer. My answer is 100% because it's 100, 100, right? So like a marriage, 50% each person responsible for the success of the marriage, or is it 100, 100? And so that to me, and I think everything else flows. Like, yeah, we put some good people in place, and yeah, we got some good members, and yeah, we have some good outreach, and yeah, we have Doug and a wonderful support system and a great team. But what I often see, Doug, is in the absence of that worldview, in the absence of that vision and mission, that each board chair integrated with the executive director, because that's a big piece of the formula. Like Susan Asadi is the executive director of New York, and we're glued at the hip. You know, she has her way of doing things, and I have my way of doing things, but together we recognize that it's not her or me, it's her and me. And then the circle expands, right? And then we were lucky to find Stephanie Emisser, who is wonderful as a support system, without which we couldn't do half of what we do. She's there with logistics and she gets people to come and she follows up and all the things, all the blocking and tackling that you need is there. So that core was able to perform out of this shared vision of we are New York, God damn it. It's almost like a little bit of like chutzpah, as we like to say in New York. It's like, hey, we're New Yorkers, you know, we're from Brooklyn. We don't get, no one pushes us around. So it's almost like that, let's bring it up, bring it on mentality. And it became contagious very fast. So like I said, it's almost like right away it came away, you know, I just, it left me and people are like, yeah, we are the giant. We are the sleeping giant. It's about time we woke up. And that message, that simplicity of that message, awakening the sleeping giant in the city that never sleeps, literally was kind of our tagline, and it remains that.
Absolutely brilliant. And as a New Yorker, I can definitely relate to that mentality for sure. I think that mentality is in all of us for our own hometown or our own business or our own family. And, you know, so I love that you tapped into that. If you could just then, you know, in terms of the progress that you've made, I think you've made some really key points, including the teamwork with Susan and with Stephanie. It's been so critical. You're very humble, so you don't want to ask for credit for that. Other than that initial anger banging on the table, we can do better. And maybe anger isn't the right word, but just enthusiasm ultimately of, look, you know, we can have a lot more activity, we can have a lot more next steps and success. And you've done that. So congratulations on that. Any words of wisdom that you'd like to share with other advisors and other board chairs around the U.S.? Before we move on to our next portion of the program?
Yeah, I think you said it really well, which is it doesn't have to be New York per se. I think you just whoever is in that role of being a board advisor chair or an executive director, I would invite us all to just examine what's the why, right? What's the why for what's the opportunity is almost a better way to say that. And if you don't have that as almost like your first step, then perhaps, and it's never too late, you can step back. I mean, from my own experience, I've had a business for 20 years, and it's only this month that can you believe it? We're literally solidifying our mission and vision. So I'm the first example of putting, and oftentimes putting the cart before the horse. And in this case, the horse is the vision and the mission pulling the cart. And so that would be number one. And so be clear. What's your vision? What's your mission? And does it align? And is it part of you with Global Chamber? And why are you doing what you're doing? Kind of a thing. I don't buy, honestly, that your primary motive is, well, I'm sure there's a little bit of that, but like, hey, if I go in a big role in a big organization and on social media, I can get some bragging chops and that will somehow help me get more business. I think that's kind of small potatoes, to be honest. So that's first. And then well, the cart before the horse. Get your house in order with your vision and your mission and why you do what you're doing. And I think it's two things, Doug, to summarize. It's philosophy and mechanics. They go together. So the philosophy is kind of like what I said, the why, all that stuff. But the mechanics are equal. And what I mean by the mechanics are just some best practices. So, for example, New York may be different because getting to the event is much easier. We have subways. It's very walkable city. There's no parking or driving necessarily. And so with that said, I think a really big mechanic, if you will, a big logistical mechanic is I insisted that we would not do hybrid. Hybrid is, in my opinion, a distraction. What I mean by hybrid is you have an event in person at a conference room, then you have a screen. We've got participants from, remote participants. They're on Zoom. They never work in my mind. There's always a wondering, what is that person doing? Their camera's off. They're making noise. They don't understand the question. So we decided to separate the channels. So we would have an in-person event every fourth Thursday of the month at a wonderful place. We have a great host, Steve Nikikiris from CBiz, and he's been very generous in making a wonderful, lovely conference room with food and drinks. He always brings that in, or they provide that. And then we have another event for people who couldn't make the in-person or who just want to do a second round, and that's all Zoom, only Zoom. So that was important. And like I said, if you don't have someone doing a lot of the logistics like Stephanie is worth her weight in gold. You can have all the leadership ideas you want, and there's no shortage of ideas in America, in the world. And there's no shortage of ideas at Global Chamber, I've noticed. What the problem is if you don't have anyone executing on those ideas, they're not really worth much. So that's necessary. It's not even so you've got to be clear-eyed as a leader. Who's the go-to? Who's the person? And get out of their way and don't micromanage them. I learned years ago, give people responsibility, don't give them tasks. I mean, you can give them tasks, but responsibility first. Like, I would like it if you could make this event happen. I would like it if you could track membership attendance. I would like it if you would own the certificate program. So we put in a recognition every in-person, we have an award. You'd be amazed. People take these awards. They're on beautiful paper stock. Stephanie, the person I've been mentioning, created the layout, and it looks wonderful. And we have some people in some really large companies, literally speechless because they got an award recognized by 20, 30 people in the meeting. And they frame it, they put it up on LinkedIn, we take pictures. So celebrating people, giving them the space. And then for God's sake, let's not keep talking about, let's announce stuff on Global Chamber. We have this event, we have this other event, and here's this thing that's happening. I think what we found is more helpful is we have a big piece of the meeting dedicated to people showcasing themselves and their business. And then we go around the room. So the showcasing is 10 to 15 minutes. Around the room is just literally speed announcing, who are you? What do you want? Who do you help? And that, some announcements and some awards, that's your meeting. And keep it fluid. I think a lot of people are like, we need an agenda and we need to be buttoned up. And you mean you need to be buttoned up? I don't need to be buttoned up, thank you. I've got my own buttons. So,
New York attitude. Thank you.
Yeah, I see people over engineering stuff, and it's like, yeah, I know it's well-meaning. It's like, oh, we don't want wasted time. But have you ever noticed that if you step back, the time is better used than if you try to force things to happen? So I think just giving people some latitude to express themselves and network. And finally, we've had people say, I feel really safe in this room. I feel really acknowledged. And we're in a turbulent world right now. And our leadership in our country kind of has a few lessons to learn from some of the things that are going on in places like the Global Chamber. And with that said, people kind of feel it's a bit of a refuge, I think, where people can kind of feel, is it okay to tell people what I care about? Yeah. Is it okay to use DEI? Yeah. Is it okay to say I'm gay and I'm in a company? Yeah. Yeah. It's very okay. So things like that aren't necessarily available in some of these companies and some of the places some of the members work. So I think there's that other element, but it's organic, right? I don't want to say, Doug, we have to do it this way. I'm just suggesting that each chapter kind of finds its purpose. So I've spoken a lot. I didn't mean to take up so much time.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your support, collaboration, friendship, and just brilliantly stated.